So let's ask her, because they like questions. What do you need? 1 o'clock, DVD, if you can afford this one. Perfect, perfect, thank you very much. Not now. Yeah. You're fine.
Well, we didn't have any on the so I thought the room could stop.
Do you want tea or lemonade, Robin?
Oh, a little bit here and there. Not as much as I like, but I'm still gonna get back to it sometime.
Do you want tea or lemonade, Robin?
Tea. Thank you. Oh, is this one?
Yeah, put your name tag on. Know who you are.
Yeah.
I don't have the password for it. Just to reassure you, we're exactly on time. Yeah, I mean, this has worked out well in spite of the emergency need for Hula bread, which is now over there.
Yes.
We were hoping for some. So thanks for coming. It's just a pleasure to be together with you all. I'm Pete Bruno. I'm the chairperson of our local LAC, which is an advisory council on mental health and addictive services. And every year, matter of fact, this is the 65th year that our nation has recognized the importance of mental health every May. And so, we can do that. And so it's our pleasure to have something educational for our community every year. So here we are today. And before we get started, I want to recognize a couple of volunteers from Toastmasters. There's one standing up just now. Toastmasters is a public speaking and leadership club, and they've helped out with these meetings ever since we've done them in Glendive. So they help to set up and help with equipment and all sorts of things. And then I want to especially recognize Cindy and Al Height, who helped with the planning of this. Thank you very much, folks.
And Robin helped too, wherever she's at.
Where's Robin at? There she is. Thank you, Cindy. Okay. So today we've got 4 speaking assignments. We're going to start with my longtime associate, William Bill Medved, and then we've got at 1 o'clock, we've got the folks from Billings NAMI coming down and going to do the program called In Our Own Voice, and I'll introduce them when they get here. And then after that, we've got in the back of the room, Barbara Kuster, who works for Pluck and who is pursuing wraparound for children's mental health services. And then after her, maybe someone you know, Libby Carter, who is the resource manager for the Children's Mental Health Bureau, before we take a break, about the time kids get out of school. So that's when we're done, till 7 o'clock tonight, when Nami's gonna go ahead and give us more of In Our Own Voice. But for those of you who are here at this time, it would be kind of a repeat. So if you want to get the most out of all of this, then by 3 o'clock, 3:30, it's time to go. And if you need to leave earlier, you're welcome to do that also. But that's what we have planned for you. So are there any questions or announcements before I introduce Mr. Medved?
Who has their cell phone for now?
Oh, yeah, good thing. Let's take care of unneeded distractions by turning our cell phones off or putting them on vibrate. If you're expecting an emergency call, please sit at the back and you can watch for when it lights up. Okay, thank you very much. See, those Toastmasters are always helpful. Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Everybody ready? Okay. So, Bill Medved was raised in Great Falls, and his adult life has been spent in service to schools, churches, and community health care. Today, he's going to share with us his relevant experiences from serving on a 6-member town planning committee that took Colstrip through 10 years of energy development impact. So won't you welcome Bill as he shares with us for about half an hour and then takes your questions and has discussion with you. Bill?
Good afternoon. It's good to be with you. Presently, I'm part of the clergy of the Roman Catholic Church now. And I've had, in the last week and a half, presided at 8 funerals. It's good to be in a room when there's not a casket or an urn present. But maybe by the time I get done, there may be one. But it's good to be here with you. It's important that you know that I'm not an expert, okay? I'm somebody who lived in the trenches of a boomtown situation for 10 years, over 10 years. That's actually in Colstrip for almost 37 years. I was recruited by the school system. I was on the campus of the University of Montana finishing my degree in counseling, and they come and sought me out and asked me if I'd be willing to come to Colstrip, which I didn't even know where it was. And they told me what they were expecting and thought that I would be a good match for the school district and for the community as we're going to go through this boom. I hesitated because professionally I wasn't sure whether I wanted to experience all the things that I thought may happen. And I also had a young family that I want to put my family in a situation where a town is booming and all the stuff that goes along with it. I told them I would stay for 3 years and help them start, and like I said, I ended up spending 37 years there. You know, too much excitement, couldn't leave. I've been reading a lot and really interested in what's going on around you guys. And when I read it and the things that are happening, I'm saying to myself, been there, experienced that. It's amazing what happens when you have a sudden influx of people in any kind of energy development. When I arrived in Colstrip, there was my wife and 3 kids and me. That made the town have 50 people in it. Wow. By the time the boom's at its highest, there's 11,000 people in the community. The school system had 135 the first day I walked through the door, and by that spring we're going to have 410 students. The community was, I don't think, really ready. Thought they would be, and we had 2 shots at this. We had the first construction period, we had a little long, and we had a second shot at it. We did much better the second time around, because you learn. When I arrived at Colstrip, there's no grocery store, there's no gas stations, There's no restaurants. The medical facility was a trailer where two old nurses in their, I think, 70s, they knew where the Band-Aids were, and that's basically all that was there. One of the major differences that I see what's happening around you guys and happened to us is Montana Power and Western Energy controlled the environment. Colstrip really had two towns. I lived in the old part of town, which was extremely nice. Infrastructure was good, roads were good, sewer system was good, water, well, the water system wasn't all that great. It's Eastern Montana water. And then literally across the track, because the track ran through the town, was where the construction people were going to live. That was trailers, and there was a big man camp that housed 1,000 guys. And it was like a motel, and they had their own restaurant in it, and their own laundry, and that was a big facility. But that was all on the other side of the track. For us who lived in the town part, we didn't feel much the effect of the infrastructure problems, but we did feel the effect of the amount of people. There was, I think, 125 post office boxes in Colstrip, and you'd go to the post office after work, and people would be lined around the corner because everybody basically had general delivery. Those of us who were lucky enough to have a box were able to get in and get our mail. That was a very difficult situation. We made a decision as a group. We don't ask the postmaster anything during that time, because it just slowed down the total operation. It was an experience, to say the least. We made a lot of really major mistakes, both in the school district and in the community, but we learned from those mistakes. And the second construction period wasn't quite as bad, still at times very horrendous, because you have a lot of people in town, a lot of money, they're making lots of money, and there's no places to go. There's not much to do, so it just generates by nature a lot of problems. Then I realized, at least for the first couple years, that I was the only person who had any training in mental health in Colstrip. Rosebud County got some services, I believe, from Miles City. There was an office in Forsyth, but I didn't meet where that person was. And one of the first person I really ever had contact was Pete. He would come down on a regular basis. I said, "Where do you work?" "Oh, we have an office in Forsyth." So it was basically myself working with the sheriff's department, the construction workers, the plants, whatever was going on in the coal mines, as far as mental health issues. One of the biggest mistakes we made as a community, and one of the biggest mistakes that we made as a school district, is that we listened to the experts. Okay? Bad mistake. Montana Power, if you were in the area at the time, was in this big battle with the EPA and the ranchers. So they wanted to do everything perfectly. And so they hired all these experts. And we would meet with these experts once a month. It took us about 6 months to realize they didn't know what they were talking about. They would come in with charts, pie graphs. Well, we didn't have PowerPoints at the time, but they had all that butcher paper kinds of things, telling us, okay, now here's what you're going to experience. Here's the growth. Here's where the growth's going to come. They were never right. It never came when they said it was. We learned very quickly, well, not quick enough, but quickly, that the people we needed to have contact with were the people building the plants. We found that out by some of our neighbors, people we went to church with, people we had community meetings with, because they knew who was coming to town. They knew that there was going to be difference between the iron workers, who were the first group to come, and the highly skilled craftspeople, because they came with the craftspeople came with their family, and so they could say, okay, In April, we're gonna bring in plumbers, and we're gonna bring in electricians. So, and here's how many we're gonna bring, so we can kind of figure out, this is how many families we would have. It was not unusual for us at the school, for me to arrive in the morning having 50 new students. That was not unusual. And finding places for 50 new kids. We had this committee within the school, and I had to report to work first in July 1st to be on this committee. And it was made up of myself, 2 teachers, superintendent, we only had 1 principal at the time, and a community member. And we would plan the things that we were going to do. And if you can imagine, we're thinking, okay, what are we going to have at the end, and trying to plan for that. We met every week to discuss where we're at, and every week there was some kind of new problem that we had to deal with. You guys have a housing problem here? Fun, isn't it? We had an incredible housing problem in coastal Montana. We had to hire a bunch of teachers. And one of my jobs, I was assigned with recruiting teachers. I'll explain that a little later. And in the community, I got tied up with the medical people committee, and we were going to try to figure out how to get medical doctors and whoever we had to get there. But housing was a major issue. I lived in an old company house that was basically there since the coal strip opened way back when the railroad used to use coal. And eventually we were allowed to buy that house. It cost me $12,000 for that house, but, you know, so it wasn't anything very fancy. I would have people come through the door offering me $100,000 for that house because they needed a place to stay. And we needed a place to stay. And so we, you know, you couldn't sell your home out for money, so housing was a problem. Medical things were a big problem. We had a major industrial accident. The 3rd year there. There's no doctors in town. The ambulance comes from Forsyth, Montana, and those guys were not trained in this kind of thing. 1 ambulance. And so we worked very hard as a community to make sure that we had some medical facilities. And if you go there today, you will see a wonderful clinic operating in Colstrip. And that's all because of all the work and the help of a program called the Rural Health Initiative, which I was involved in for a long time. So housing was an issue, medical was an issue, the school was an issue. We didn't have enough room for kids coming in. And you walk a general line. One of the biggest mistakes, I don't know what you guys are doing here. Everybody here from the school? Okay, so I can talk worse than I normally would, okay? One of the really big mistakes that we made, and we tried not to do it, and it happened at the end when we had a change of superintendent. The first superintendent we had was really good. Second guy we got didn't know much. You guys know that superintendents and school boards like to build buildings? They like to see their names on plaques. And we're able to kind of fight that off by using relocatables and modular units, because we weren't sure exactly what we were going to have at the end. Right now, there's a high school in Colstrip at one time was a state-of-the-art high school. It could house 600 kids. The most it ever housed was 550. Right now, there's 195 kids in that building. They built 2 elementary schools. Don't need one of them. They haven't needed it for a while. Right now, they're faced with a building situation that they're going to have to close down 2 schools totally because they don't have enough kids. They have 600 kids in their school district. At one time, we had 2,300 kids in the school district. So you have a choice. You know, are you going to build buildings that you think you are going to use beyond whatever happens here and hope that you have enough room? Or are you going to find creative ways to house kids? We had a modular school for the high school that was connected to the old high school. That was a marvelous facility. You know, it was trailers, you know, the plumbing was trailers, but it worked very well for our needs during the crunch. Sometimes we got caught short, and we had to go to the mall. There's a mall across the street and rent store areas for classrooms for a little bit. I'm going to go back a little bit to the housing. I'm going to talk about one thing that was really kind of interesting. I was the recruiter of teachers and overflow teachers, is what we call them. They were teachers that we hired for a semester at a time. We had a general philosophy within the school district that any kid who came was to be extremely welcome. And the second thing is teachers are going to have what they need. Well, if you can imagine being a second grade teacher, you have 10 kids in your class, and this idiot comes in with 30 others. Kind of stresses teachers out. It also violates state standards of classroom size. So we decided that we were going to hire, and this was really easy on the elementary level, teachers that we could, when kids would come in, we put them in classrooms with these overflow teachers. Now, an overflow teacher may have grades 1 through 3, just like a country school, until we're able to get the kids into a room or hire a permanent teacher and open up their classroom. We started with 1 5th grade, and by the time baby boom, we had 7 5th grades. It was hard to balance all that. So I would go to schools, I'd get on the road, and I'd start at Eastern, Montana, I'll call it Billings, MSU, and I'd make my way to Bozeman, to Dillon, to the University of Montana, or come back through College Great Falls. The people, I stopped at Dillon too a lot, and the people from Northern, there's teachers, they would come down for interviews. If you can imagine, I'm hiring you and say, how would you like to come to Colchester and live in a little apartment? And I'm going to give you a contract for a semester. I can't believe how many people took that because they wanted experience on their record. And there's only 2 teachers that still teach at Colstrip from all the teachers I hired. I probably hired 500 overflow teachers at least. Some are really good. Sometimes come back and somebody can say, what the hell were you thinking about? You know, hiring this individual. That was a very difficult thing to do. But we had these overflow classrooms that worked really nice. We had one teacher in charge of finding us textbooks. The first thing we did, we found out, are all our textbooks current? If they're not, let's get rid of them, because we might need 30 textbooks within 3 or 4 days. You know, you don't have the internet at this time, so you know, that's all this basis teacher did was only half-time schedule. She was finding textbooks and materials for classrooms. So that was a very difficult thing to juggle. The second construction period, we kind of knew what was going to happen, so we actually had classrooms kind of ready. We had teachers kind of ready, although we still had hired some teachers on semester contracts. We had bought trailers. They had 3 apartments in them, and they had a common kitchen and a common bathroom. But they weren't too bad, and that's where these teachers would stay, these old teachers. And we had a number of them. Because at one time, we had 110 overflow teachers that were trying to run these apartments. Montana Power is very good at providing the space for those. They did a good job of building trailer courts, infrastructure for that, except to where the construction workers were. That didn't work so well out there, but it worked pretty well in the town area. I can't imagine a teacher coming to that. So what am I hiring? I'm hiring a
First-year teacher.
First-year teacher, probably not married, no experience, and needs a job. Because it's December and most schools aren't offering contracts, but I'm coming in offering contracts. Then I would do that again in the springtime, and I had better success in the springtime getting some very, very good teachers. And they hadn't found anything yet. They wanted to come down and get some experience. So housing, no matter you have, is a major issue. Money for a school and for a community is a major issue. Schools work by getting money from the state, what they call A and B money, how many kids you have. That's reported in October. So we report in October 135 students. The state funded us for 135 students. By February, we have 400 and no money. And so our superintendent, who liked to smooth with politicians, he spent a lot of time up in Helena. He spent a lot of time with the senators, and that time we had 2 congressmen. And finally got some pressure to give us some money. So we're able to finish off the year and pay our bills. Eventually, what's going to shake loose is coal money. And once coal money got shaken loose for our district, we had all the money we needed to deal with. We could deal with anything. Matter of fact, we have so much money, eventually we're going to be sued. Because by other schools saying, you're spending $12,000 per student, we can only spend $3,000 or whatever it was. So they froze our budget so they could catch up with us. They're still trying to catch up with the Colstrip School District because the school district is sitting next to billion-dollar plants. They run a mill that's worth 10 times more than any mill anywhere else. But that took a while to get to that level. Within the community, people are really concerned about school. If you're an electrician, you're going to come to Colstrip to work for Bechtel, the first thing you're going to ask is, what is the school like? Should I bring my family? And so we work really hard as a community to present that, and also really hard as a school district to present that. I was in charge of PR for the district, which was kind of interesting, because every newspaper in the world seemed like they wanted to come to Colstrip and look at this boom town. There's people from Time, there's people from Newsweek, Life magazine came down, New York Times, hundreds of them, seems like. And they would all run through my office, wanting to talk to students, which, you know, even then there's confidentiality issues, but I would spend at least probably 15, 20 minutes a day talking to a reporter of some kind, trying to set something. Why don't you go out and bother people in the street, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of pressure. Anybody who wanted to do any kind of experiment in education came here. Because they wanted to see what we got. People coming from all over the country. Can you imagine trying to even find their school records? We had kids that walked into that high school. This was their 15th high school and they're sophomores. It's kind of hard to get caught up and find places for them. So all that impacts a school and impacts the community. What was the first major issue we had in the community? Drugs. Okay, housing, then drugs. Yeah. Drugs were a major issue within the school. It was a major issue within the community because this is a population, again, lots of money, lots of free time, and it's a good place. So drugs hit the community hard. As a school counselor, there was not a drug. There's new drugs now, but that I didn't see within that school district, in that school, that we didn't bust somebody within that school year because there were so many drugs around. Connected to our place also a reservation, and we had 30% of our population were Cheyennes and Crows, and they were greatly impacted by it. All of a sudden, you got these kids coming in, and a lot of those kids felt forced out, you know, because they went to Colstrip and there was 35 kids in their class. Now there's 120, 150 kids, and so that affected them greatly. And a lot of them left and went to other schools simply because of this influx of people walking through the door on a constant basis. I sat down at the end of the third year and figured out every day I registered 15 kids and checked out 20. All right? I figure, well, you figure, well, eventually I'm gonna get caught up. Well, you don't, because then you come back in the fall, and there's 100 new students or 50 new students ready to go to school because their families now have moved there. The housing issue was never solved very well. Montana Power had such a grip on housing and land that it became very difficult for people to do anything as far as housing. They also had a real grip on what businesses would come in. And if you go to Colstrip today, you'll see there's not much, there's hardly businesses there. And that's because Montana Power said, we're gonna select who's gonna come in. And we as a community said, let's let somebody come in. You won't let anybody come in. There was offers from stores like Ben Franklin and hardware stores and department stores that wanted to come in to get advantage of this boom. So we were forced as a community to travel. And we go to Miles City, we go to Billings, and we used to go to Forsyth, but what happened in Forsyth, and Forsyth people are still mad at Colstrip today, is that they would not accept their checks. All right? The school district issued a card to those that worked in the school saying, this person is not a construction worker. He works for District 19 in Colstrip. Didn't make any difference. Only 2 places in Forsyth would take checks. What time? I get done at quarter 2, right? Okay. And that was the IGA store, and there was a store called the V store. Beyond that, any place you went in Forsyth, you could not cash a check if you were from Colstrip. There's no debit cards. Yeah, you get charge cards. So what were we forced? We went to Billings, Miles City. And that did 2 things. Really cranked Forsyth, and it stopped some of the business development within Colstrip because we're so used to it. The other thing that's going to affect the business is the plants put in shift work, and the guys are working 4 days a week and having a week off. Let's go to Billings and spend some time. But those are some of the issues that the community was dealing with. I went and looked at the fire truck. The fire truck looked like it was the Keystone Fire Department truck. It was an old hook and ladder. Sometimes it started, sometimes it didn't. Really good volunteers with that. We had a fire at the high school. They couldn't get the hose to work. And it almost burned down one part of the high school before they got things going. Nobody thought, well, we have all these people, maybe we should have some fire equipment. So that was one thing the community had to start working. Give us some fire equipment. Again, the advantage we had is Montana Power wanted this to really look good. And so if they would come to town and they bring the senators, congressmen, or the state people, they very seldom went out to the man camp. They stayed in kind of the normal part of town. And so it looked really good at times on the outside, but for those of us who were living on the inside, sometimes it was mass chaos. It was really mass chaos. I was giving some testimony in front of the state legislature. We were trying to get some money for housing and some kind of, I don't remember what it was. The superintendent was next to me, and he just can't leave me by myself, and go off the rail. And he had left, and this lady from this committee handed me this packet that was about Colstrip. And I opened it up, and there's collages of pictures, and I started looking, and he said, "Is this what Colstrip is like?" I said, "Yeah, a lot of it's like this, except there's 2 pictures in here that I don't know what they're of." They had inserted pictures from other places to make Colstrip look good. I don't know, this recreation center is in here. I don't know where the swimming pool is. I don't know where this is. But they were so concerned about how it looked on the outside. I don't think you guys have that concern here. Is there anybody who's really concerned how it looks? Now, that was a big issue in Colstrip. The company was really, really concerned what this was looking at. So we had more cooperation than probably we would normally have had in that kind of situation, especially with the schools. You know, we went to Montana Power, we need this, we'll see what we can do. Went to the coal company, we need this, we'll see what we can do. I was on a committee, I tell Pete this, my wife pointed this out to me. I was on a committee of 6 people. I'm the only one left alive. I think the rest of them must have killed them off. It was unbelievable. So like I said, I started saying when I read what you guys have going on here, it's the same thing that we had, just probably a little smaller scale, but pretty intense. When I left the school district, started working full time for the Catholic Church, I had over 100 cards, business cards, all from mental health providers. I don't know how many people came in and handed me a card. This is what I am a family therapist. I work with children. I do this, I do that. And as I got to talk to them, I realized they didn't have a lot of any education, official education, other than they knew where to get business cards. It was very dangerous in that community. You know, people would hang out a license, or they'd rent up a space and see family therapists. No real training, nobody watching over them, no licensing whatsoever. And a lot of those came in, and a lot of them left. The only persons that I let in to the Coastal School District is this guy, which was a mistake, right? I let him in to help to work with us. There was a drug and alcohol counselor that we let in. We needed help doing that the county provided, and one other therapist from the mental health center in Forsyth. The rest of the people were not qualified to come in. It was my job to check them out, and they would give me phone numbers and addresses of places and buildings that didn't exist. And so that's a danger. We had the other danger we have is thieves. And the school system, we had a tremendous problem. We had kids that would come check in, and they looked like they were, 16, 17, and they go through the school district and take anything they get their hands on. And they'd be gone. Well, by the time we got the records, it's not unusual, they moved on anyway. And I got a call one time from Los Angeles, the police department in one part of Los Angeles, saying, we got a bunch of movie projectors here. You guys lose some? They got your name on them. And we had lost 5 movie projectors. And the kid, the rest of it, I never forget his name, was Tim Terry. And I said, well, how old is he? He's 37. Oh my God, he did. He looked like he was 18 years old. So that's another danger you have within these movie communities, is trying to figure out who's legitimate, who isn't, who can help you, who can't, like I said, I had 3 young kids, but the company did a really good job of taking our side of the tracks. Seemed that all the sheriffs were on our side of town. Those guys could probably tear apart the trailer park and the man camp, and maybe the sheriff officer would show up. But it was interesting. It was stressful at times. Sometimes I come home and I come home like this. If we leave at the end of the year, then I said, no, I want to see what's going to happen. And we went. At one time, the high school had 625 kids in it. We had 11,000 people in town. Right now, there's 2,100 people approximately living in Colstrip, and there's 600 kids in the school district. There's still no businesses, and if you want to buy a school building, I know where 2 are for sale. And that is really too bad. And that was poor planning by the school district to sitting out with those beautiful buildings. All right, stop there. Try to answer the question. Yes.
How did you set the standards for class divisions? Were there different standards?
It was difficult. You had different requirements in different states. You had, we state required one credit science, and we got permission then to alter that. Permission that state says that they can't do that anymore, but they can't do that, I'm sorry.
So I'm just wondering, did the state have any influence into what the requirements were?
No, that was all done in local, and that's what the overflow classrooms were for. Those worked really well, so we could take kids, find out their level of work, get them up to oxygen level that we were, get them to the classroom. And sometimes this could take 2 weeks, sometimes it took a month, and unfortunately, they made it in our school system for months. Yeah, so we were able to develop all that. Yeah. We're talking from, I arrived in 73, and it's about 82, I think, was the last plant. So the big push was from when they started the 2 big plants. That was from 76 to Colstrip was supposed to have 7 plants, and they only ended up having 4. So, yes, sir.
With the middle road was part of it, how much of that did you see in this 2016?
Lots. A lot of it related to drugs. You know, I don't know how you, as a kid, you never have any friends. Key. Quite a bit of depression. You know, kids not attaching to other kids because they knew their dad was going to be there maybe 6 months. So that a lot of our kids were isolated. We did a lot of work trying to. The local kids, they're such neat. I never met anybody really from Colstrip. I mean, my kids are about as close as we get, but they weren't born there. There's a few kids that were local kids. They were very willing to allow those kids in. They weren't clicked out. Or there was something that said we're not going to let these kids in. Some of the ranching kids struggled a bit with it. Because the depression was there to destroy the environment. It was a major issue. You got to understand, I have no place to turn, no place to go other than what I can, what resources, basically people want. Yep.
I grew up in Colstrip.
You did.
Was there, I started 3rd grade there in 72.
All right. Who was your teacher? Young Power?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Okay.
I had 7 kids in my class when I started 3rd grade. 2 boys and all the rest were girls. I remember going out to the trailers.
Yeah.
I lived 3 blocks. I lived in one of the coal. My father ran the coal shovel out there. I remember as a kid we were never allowed to go across the tracks, which we did. I remember the swimming holes, and our house had. I remember as a kid we just take off walking. I had a brother that was blind that finished his high school years.
I knew Chuck really well.
That's my brother.
Yeah.
That's my family.
Matter of fact, they returned Chuck to school because I was there. I would have done some training at the school.
Yeah.
Chuck and I.
Yeah, you guys did great. He was able to wrestle. He had such a normal high school, and it was because of what Colstrip did for him. He had his own route to walk home, and we're about 3 or 4 blocks from the school. And yeah, that's my family.
So you're a lab.
Live. It's L-A-I-V, but it's pronounced live. Yep, that's my family. So yeah, I went.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 81, but we left. My 2 brothers graduated together in 79. I moved to Mouse City, finished my senior year in Mouse City.
Somebody from home.
Yes, 1907.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. All
Yeah.
that.
So,
Yeah.
What about the affordable housing? Did that ever go there? Or was somebody, we get in the lot of stuff, and prevent about who are getting our people that are actually losing homes that they've lived in for years because they can't afford to raise that food their farm.
well, we didn't have that problem because her family, she lived, I think, Walker. I lived down in where Shies used to live.
Yep.
Okay, and,
Buffaloes were across the
sorry for
street.
reminiscing here. So that wasn't a problem because there wasn't very many of us, and there was no public housing, of any kind. And they started bringing, people started coming in trailers before anything, because nobody was planning to ever stay there. And so that wasn't an issue for us. It became an issue, trying to get people in. That's where I couldn't say to a teacher, with what, you know, you may have to live in Tulsa. Any other questions you can answer? Yeah. Not really. Construction kids, food counts aren't involved much. There's some maintenance. In fact, we had one kid by the name of Phil McLaughlin who ended up on the U.S. Olympic team. His dad was one of the vice presidents that and we had one of the kids that was an FBI agent on the reservation. But they didn't even follow these extracurriculars or sports much. Why play football? You may not be there. Why get basketball? You may not be there. That was an issue.
So we're gonna go ahead and take a short break and about 1 o'clock or maybe 5 after, start with the next part of our program. Bathrooms are out and kind of around. Where you first came in the main entryway where it says